How do you lose a war when you have everything? 800 years ago, Joy Boy stood at the center of the most powerful alliance in history. The ancient kingdom possessed technology that even Vegapunk cannot recreate. Its influence stretched across the world. Its allies included some of the most important figures and races in One Piece history. And yet, it lost. The ancient kingdom vanished. The Void Century was erased. And the world government took control of the world. But here's the problem. The more Oda reveals about that era, the less this defeat makes sense. Because every new piece of information raises the same question. How did Joy Boy lose? Was Imu simply stronger? Was there a betrayal? Did the ancient weapons fail? Or is the answer hidden in something much bigger? Because when we examine the legacy Joy Boy left behind, the Poneglyphs, Zunesha, the Sea Kings, and the promise of the Dawn, we discover a contradiction that changes everything. A contradiction that may reveal not only why Joy Boy failed, but why the world government succeeded. And if this theory is correct, the real reason Joy Boy lost has been hiding in plain sight for 800 years. The biggest mystery of the Void Century isn't who Joy Boy was. It's how he lost. Because every new piece of information Oda reveals creates the same problem. Joy Boy's defeat should have been impossible. We're talking about a civilization with technology that even Vegapunk struggles to understand. A civilization capable of creating the Iron Giant. A civilization connected to the ancient weapons, the Kozuki Clan, the D Clan, Fishman Island, and some of the most important figures in history. On paper, this wasn't a weak kingdom fighting against impossible odds. It was a superpower, and yet it lost. The ancient kingdom vanished. The 20 kings won. The world government was born. But here's what doesn't make sense. When civilizations lose, their influence disappears. Their allies abandon them. Their ideas are forgotten. That didn't happen to Joy Boy. 800 years later, the Kozuki Clan still carries out its mission. The D Clan still exists. The Sea Kings still wait for a promised day. Zunesha still walks the oceans, carrying a punishment tied to the Void Century. Even the Poneglyphs continue guiding people toward the truth. It's almost as if the ancient kingdom lost the war, but somehow won the future. And that's where the contradiction begins. Because if Joy Boy's influence was powerful enough to survive for 800 years, how did his kingdom fall in the first place? Maybe we're asking the wrong question. Maybe this war wasn't decided by who had the stronger army. Maybe it was decided by something much deeper. Because unlike most defeated leaders in history, Joy Boy didn't leave behind ruins. He left behind a plan. And once we understand that plan, everything about his defeat starts to look very different. If Joy Boy truly lost the war, then one thing doesn't make sense. Why was he planning for a future 800 years away? Because everywhere we look, we find evidence of preparation. The Poneglyphs, the Kozuki Clan, the promise to Fishman Island, the Sea Kings waiting for a certain day, Zunesha still carrying out a punishment from the Void Century. These aren't the actions of someone who simply failed. They're the actions of someone preparing for the future. And the best example is the Poneglyphs. Most fans see them as historical records, but they're much more than that. They're a system, a way to preserve the truth even if the ancient kingdom was destroyed. But notice something important. The Poneglyphs don't command people. They don't force obedience. They simply preserve information and leave the choice to future generations. That same pattern appears throughout Joy Boy's legacy. He trusted the Kozuki Clan to protect history. He trusted future generations to find the Poneglyphs. He trusted someone in the future to fulfill the promise he couldn't keep. Everything Joy Boy built depended on faith. Faith that someday someone would finish what he started. And that creates another mystery. If Joy Boy was capable of creating a plan that could survive for 800 years, why didn't he create something capable of stopping Imu immediately? Because the answer may reveal the fundamental difference between Joy Boy and the people who defeated him. At first glance, the Void Century looks like a war between two sides. The Ancient Kingdom and the 20 Kings. Joy Boy and Emu. But what if the real conflict wasn't between people? What if it was between ideas? Because when we look at what both sides left behind, a pattern begins to emerge. Joy Boy's entire legacy is built on choice. The Poneglyphs preserve information, but they don't force anyone to read them. The Kozuki Clan preserves history, but future generations are free to ignore it. Even the prophecy of the dawn depends on someone choosing to fulfill it. Everything Joy Boy created was built on trust. Trust that people would eventually do the right thing. Emu's system works very differently. The world government doesn't rely on trust. It relies on authority. The Marines enforce order. Cypher Pole eliminates threats. The Celestial Dragons sit above everyone else. Every part of the system exists to maintain control, and that's the difference. Joy Boy built a future based on freedom. Emu built a future based on obedience. One system asks people to believe. The other demands that they obey. And for 800 years, only one of those systems managed to control the world. Which raises an uncomfortable question. If Joy Boy's ideals were better, why did Emu's system win? Because the answer to that question may reveal the decision that changed history forever. A decision symbolized by one object more than any other, the empty throne. To understand why Joy Boy lost, we need to talk about the empty throne. Because after the revelations about Emu, that throne means something completely different than we once believed. Officially, the empty throne represents equality. No king stands above another. No ruler controls the world. The 20 kings supposedly agreed that no single person should ever hold absolute power. But we now know that's a lie, because someone does sit above everyone else, Emu. And that changes the entire Void Century, because suddenly the conflict isn't just about who won a war. It's about who won the argument. Think about what Joy Boy left behind. The Poneglyphs preserve the truth, but they don't force anyone to follow it. His promises depended on future generations keeping them. His entire plan relied on people choosing to carry his will forward. Everything Joy Boy built was based on trust. Trust that people would eventually make the right choice. But trust is risky. People can fail. People can be manipulated. People can forget. And that's exactly what the world government spent 800 years proving. Now compare that to Emu. Emu didn't trust humanity. Emu controlled it. The world government wasn't built on inherited will. It was built on authority. While Joy Boy entrusted the future to people he would never meet, Emu created a system that could force obedience long after its creators were gone. And that's where the title of this theory finally makes sense. When I say Joy Boy refused to become a god, I don't mean that literally. I mean, he refused to place himself above humanity. Because if Joy Boy truly believed freedom was the ultimate goal, then becoming the sole ruler of the world would have betrayed everything he stood for. A man fighting for freedom cannot simply place himself on a throne and declare that everyone must follow him. That's not liberation. That's control. So instead of ruling the future, Joy Boy trusted the future. Instead of creating a world dependent on his authority, he created one dependent on inherited will. And that may have been the decision that changed history. Because while Joy Boy was building a future based on choice, Emu was building a future based on certainty. One system asked humanity to do the right thing. The other made sure it had no alternative. And in the short term, history tells us which system won. The ancient kingdom fell. The world government rose. And Joy Boy's dream was pushed 800 years into the future. Maybe Joy Boy didn't lose because he lacked power. Maybe he lost because he refused to become the kind of ruler his enemies already were. Not a god in the literal sense, but a man standing above everyone else, deciding the fate of the world. And if that's true, then Joy Boy's greatest strength may have also been the reason for his defeat. If this theory is correct, then the real question isn't why Joy Boy lost. It's why Imu won. Because despite everything the ancient kingdom possessed, the world government achieved something far more valuable than victory. It achieved permanence. For 800 years, kingdoms have risen and fallen. Pirates have conquered the seas. Entire civilizations have disappeared. Yet the world government remains. And that's because Imu understood something Joy Boy may not have. Control works faster than freedom. Think about it. Freedom depends on people making the right choice. Control doesn't. A government built on fear can function even when nobody believes in it. A government built on authority can survive even when its leaders are corrupt. A government built on obedience doesn't need people to agree. It only needs them to comply. That's exactly what the world government became. A system capable of preserving itself no matter who stood at the top. And for centuries, it worked. The truth was hidden. The Poneglyphs were outlawed. Scholars were hunted down. Entire islands vanished from history. One by one, the pieces of Joy Boy's world were erased, at least on the surface. Because here's the irony. The more aggressively the world government tried to destroy Joy Boy's legacy, the more they proved how dangerous it was. After all, nobody spends 800 years suppressing an idea they aren't afraid of. And that's where the tragedy of Joy Boy becomes clear. His system wasn't weaker than Imu's. It was slower. Imu built a machine designed to dominate the present. Joy Boy built a message designed to reach the future. One produced immediate results. The other required centuries. And history rewarded Imu first. The ancient kingdom disappeared. The world government ruled the world. And for generations, it looked as if Joy Boy had failed completely. But maybe that's exactly what Imu wanted everyone to believe. Because if Joy Boy's plan truly ended 800 years ago, then why is the world government still terrified of his name? Why fear the D Clan? Why fear Nika? Why fear the return of Joy Boy? The answer is simple. Because despite winning the war, Imu may never have won the future. And that's the one thing Joy Boy was always fighting for. At this point, you might be thinking something troubling. If Joy Boy lost because he trusted people instead of controlling them, then isn't Luffy making the exact same mistake? After all, Luffy doesn't want to rule the world. He doesn't want authority. He doesn't want people obeying him. In many ways, he seems even less interested in power than Joy Boy was. Which raises an obvious question. Why should this story end differently? Why won't history simply repeat itself? The answer may be hidden in one crucial detail. Luffy isn't starting where Joy Boy started. He's starting where Joy Boy ended. Think about everything that had to happen for Luffy to reach this point. The Poneglyphs survived. The Kozuki Clan protected their secret for centuries. Zunesha endured his punishment. Roger discovered the truth. Odin opened Wano's borders. Whitebeard announced the One Piece to the world. Every generation carried a small piece of Joy Boy's will forward. And now, after 800 years, all of those pieces are finally beginning to come together. That's what makes Luffy different. Joy Boy was trying to create the future. Luffy was born into the future Joy Boy created. For the first time in 800 years, the people waiting for the dawn are no longer scattered and disconnected. The ancient weapons are re-emerging. The truth of the Void Century is getting closer to being revealed. The world government is losing control. Even Imu's system is beginning to crack. In other words, Luffy isn't fighting the same battle Joy Boy fought. He's fighting the final stage of it. And that changes everything. Because maybe Joy Boy's greatest mistake wasn't trusting humanity. Maybe the real mistake is assuming his plan failed. After all, if the goal was to create someone capable of finishing what he started, then that plan may be working exactly as intended. Which leads us to a completely different way of looking at the Void Century. Maybe Joy Boy didn't lose the war. Maybe he lost the first battle. And for the last 800 years, the world has been moving toward the final one. And maybe that's the biggest misunderstanding in all of One Piece. For years, we've looked at the Void Century as a story about Joy Boy's failure. The ancient kingdom fell. The world government won. Imu took control of the world. Case closed. But after looking at everything Joy Boy left behind, that conclusion feels harder and harder to accept. Because failures don't usually last 800 years. Failures don't leave behind prophecies. Failures don't inspire generation after generation to carry on their will. And failures certainly don't terrify the most powerful organization in the world 8 centuries later. Maybe Joy Boy lost the war. Maybe he even lost his world. But if his goal was to create a future where freedom could one day return, then that future is closer than it has ever been. The world government is beginning to crack. The truth is beginning to surface. And the man Joy Boy spent 800 years waiting for has finally arrived. Which means the question isn't whether Joy Boy failed. The real question is whether Luffy can finally finish what Joy Boy started. Because if he can, then the Void Century wasn't the story of a defeat. It was a story of an 800-year plan, and we're about to witness its final chapter. But what do you think? Did Joy Boy lose because he refused to rule the world? Or was his faith in future generations the greatest decision he ever made? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed this theory, don't forget to subscribe for more One Piece mysteries, lore, deep dives, and Final Saga theories. Until next time, the dawn is closer than ever.